Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you all. How's everybody doing today? Oh man, this is an exciting group. So good to see so many friends, old and new. Now my understanding is that when I'm done in the wrap up, they're supposed to have like a big door prize. All right, well that's exciting. Finally, we've got something to lock people in so they don't run away from my jokes before I get a chance to get them told. Now, everybody knows me, knows I always like to start with something funny, and I'm actually going to roll something out old for the new. We got so many new people, I want to make sure they had an opportunity to hear it. But you know, there was this Kentucky girl, and she fell in love with an Indiana boy. And she called up her daddy, and she said, "Daddy, I am in love with Clarence." He said, "Clarence? Isn't Clarence from Indiana?" He said, "Yes, sir, he is." He said, "I don't want you dating an Indiana boy. I hear they're mean. Sometimes they throw chairs." For those of you who know, that's Bobby Knight reference. But you know how little girls are. I got two of them. They got daddy wrapped around their finger. So she goes ahead and she gets married. 2 years later, she calls up and says, "Daddy, you were right. Clarence being mean to me." He said, "Don't you worry. I'll grab you two big brothers. We'll go up there and we'll take care of old Clarence." So they hop in the car and they drive up to Louisville. They drive across the bridge to Indiana. But just as soon as they get there, they call back and says, Daddy, you were right. He's being mean to me." He said, "Don't you worry. Don't you worry at all. We're almost there." But as soon as they cross that bridge, the dad turns around, starts heading right back. And the two brothers says, Daddy, aren't we going to help Sissy?" He said, "Boys, I'd love to. But didn't you see that sign across the bridge? Clarence, 11'7". I'm sorry. Well, thank you. Well, from the very moment that I first took office in 2016, we've worked diligently to try to work with our county officials, our state officials. And, you know, the very first thing that I did is I told everybody we don't target anyone, we don't give anybody a pass, we just simply follow the data. We thought that was very important. The other thing we did is, since I had 13 years in the Kentucky General Assembly prior to becoming auditor, I wanted to make sure that we worked with our counties to make sure that not only what the audits that we did, but everything we did was try to be as efficient, effective, and as ethical, and to try to help individuals and counties save money. And one of the things that we do is, we work with other organizations. So thankful to work with KACo during this last session of the General Assembly. We worked to help actually appropriate some additional funding to help counties offset some of the audit costs. You know, a lot of people, I know you all know, but a lot of people don't realize that we come and we audit, we actually invoice for our audit. Well, this last session, we were able to work with KACo, work with the General Assembly, and we're very thankful for the efforts of the General Assembly, and appropriated an additional $5.25 million. Now, how does that break down? Well, about $4.5 million of that, over $2.25 million in each of the biennium, goes to help offset the cost of your sheriff's and your county clerk's office. You know, in the past, when we invoice for fiscal courts, we would invoice at 50% of that cost. Well, previously, the sheriffs and the county clerks, we would invoice at 100%. So this allowed us to invoice even those sheriffs and those county clerks at 50%. So we think you all will see a great improvement in the billing on that, at least during the next 2 years. Now, in addition to that, we appropriated an additional $750,000. About $500,000 of that is in the first biennium, $250,000 in the second biennium, to help offset what we were calling our Outlier Audit Assistance Program. Sometimes you'll have a sheriff or a county clerk audit that may be substantially above a standard cost of an audit we do. That can be for various reasons. Maybe there's some poor paperwork, maybe there's just some items going on that causes that to go up. So with this particular fund, what it does, it allows for those that fall outside that threshold to basically apply for, and in many instances get approved for, an offset for some of those previous audit costs. Now, another bill that we worked with was Senate Bill 144. Now, that was back in 2018. And what we were finding was we had about half our sheriffs and about 2/3 of our county clerks that had no findings on their financial statement audit. And we thought, what can we do to reward all of their efforts? And so what we did is we looked, and there was a bill that I think originated out of Ohio, and we worked on what we called our AUP program, an agreed upon procedure. So if you have a sheriff or a county clerk that had a clean audit in years past, well, then they could, in the following year, they could apply for an AUP, an agreed upon procedure. There's less, it's still extremely transparent, but there's less procedures, so you had an opportunity to save. Now, I'm happy to announce that in the first 2 years, in 2018 and 2019 of our AUP program, there was a little over $841,000 in savings for the counties based on this particular program. By the time we wrapped up the third fiscal year of that, there was right at about $1.3 million in savings, and all of that goes back to your all's counties. So very thankful about that. On average, we found that county clerks saved on average about 64% on the cost of an audit, of a previous financial statement audit. Our sheriffs averaged about 65, although I did see some have as much as 70 or more than 70%. Now, whenever I'm talking auditing, you know, I always got to take just a little break from time to time to do an additional joke, just kind of make sure you're still paying attention. So, did you hear about the auditor that was very concerned about his dog? Very concerned about his dog. His dog was using the bathroom in the exact same place, so he was concerned about a lack of segregation of duties. It was just really weighing on him. So some of our sheriffs and county clerks would get that. But anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, now, in addition to our audits, a lot of times we do what's known as special exams. And one special exam I want to talk about, in May of 2020, we released our special exam of select county attorney offices in Kentucky. Now, my office made the decision to conduct this examination because of issues identified during a separate examination in 2019 and other concerns that our office had received. Now, while auditors were gathering information and documents related to an examination of the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services Child Support Enforcement Program, or CSE, which we released in December of 2019, they discovered other issues within the county attorney offices. Now, based on what we found, we made 3 referrals to state and federal law enforcement for county attorney offices in Boyd, Lawrence, and Gallatin County. Now, during our initial review as part of the child support enforcement exam, auditors uncovered potentially fraudulent activities that led to more than $16,000 in excess payments to the former Boyd County Child Support Office Supervisor during fiscal year 2018. Now, on September 26, 2019, APA auditors requested bank records for the Boyd County Child Support Program for fiscal year 2018. Now, following this request, the Child Support Office Supervisor had returned with bank statements and acknowledged that she had been taking money from the Child Support Office. Now, so for me, this appears to be our Perry Mason moment. As I understand it, our auditors asked for bank statements, and then she came back into the county attorney and basically said, "I know why the auditor's here. I've been stealing." So now I told that to one of our new auditors, younger auditors, and she was like, "Who's Perry Mason?" So making me feel very old. Very old. So really, just by asking a few questions and able to shine the light on that, we were able to lead to that particular arrest. Now, this led to a 77-count indictment in state court and a plea agreement to federal charges. In September of 2020, she pled guilty in U.S. District Court to 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft, and was sentenced to 36 months in prison. Now, federal investigators found that she had stolen more than $126,000 over a 6.5-year period. Now, I'd like to take just a second to talk about the Lawrence County Attorney, Mike Hogan. In June of 2021, the Lawrence County Attorney was indicted on 9 counts of wire fraud and 5 counts of federal program theft. His wife was indicted on a single count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Now, the charges came from the referral that we made to the federal officials on our findings that Hogan had basically paid his wife $126,000 in bonuses over a 2-year period. Now, when we did our actual audit, what we found was that, one, they were paying bonuses, which technically, with a few exceptions, that's not permitted by Section 3 of the Kentucky Constitution. But he had paid about $134,000 in bonuses. Of that, about 94% of that went to his wife, so a little over $60,000 a year for 2 years. And as it turns out, and that was in addition to her $40,000 a year salary, compared to some of the assistant county attorneys. I think he was paid like $2,500, one of them was $650 over the same 2-year period. So needless to say, that was some concerns. And as I understand it, the federal indictment stated federal investigators reviewed Lawrence County Attorney's delinquent tax account going back to March of 2013, and they actually alleged that $365,000 had been taken between 2013 and 2020. On March 29th of this year, the Lawrence County Attorney pled guilty in U.S. District Court to 1 count of wire fraud and 1 count of federal program theft. His wife pleaded guilty to 1 count of wire fraud. Now, as part of the plea agreement, Hogan resigned his public office, and on September 27th in U.S. District Court in Frankfort, Michael Hogan was sentenced to 42 months in prison, and his wife Joy was sentenced to 1 year and 1 day behind bars, and of course he must report December 6th. Now, following that work, we actually, of course, was very pleased. We were able to work with the County Attorney Association, and we were able to develop 2 things. One, we developed a pilot program that allowed us to come in. I think at the last count we had 23 county attorneys that volunteered to do an AUP program. The other thing that we did is we also worked to pass House Bill 782, which basically establishes a clear end-of-term transfer protocols for county attorneys and requires annual financial reporting to the Prosecutors Advisory Council beginning July 1st, 2023. So, as I indicated at the beginning, our motto has always been follow the data, and certainly I encourage you all, if you would like to check out our work, go to auditor.ky.gov. Also, if you all have tips of waste, fraud, or abuse, you can either call 1-800-KY-ALERT or go to auditor.ky.gov. And certainly, my one final pitch, anytime that I go, I always try to recruit. If you know of anybody in your communities that is in college or maybe getting close to being out of college, we are always posting and always recruiting for new auditors. And basically, a beginning auditor one needs a bachelor's degree, basically in any area, but 20 hours of accounting. So encourage your people, if you know of anybody, just to watch us on Facebook and Twitter and our web page, and encourage them to apply. Thank you all. God bless. I don't know if they